The giant crystal room buzzed with nervous energy as creatures from 47 different worlds sat around the curved walls. You could feel the fear in the air, thick and heavy like smoke. These weren't your typical diplomatic meetings where everyone argues about trade routes or mining rights. No, this was what they grimly called the final solution meeting. And every single delegate knew they were about to make a decision that would change everything. Ambassador Velthara stood at the center of it all, her crystalline form catching the light as she manipulated the holographic projector with movements that looked like a deadly dance. The first image flickered to life, and immediately, half the room flinched backward. What they saw didn't make sense to their carefully ordered minds. Bipedal creatures, humans, as they called themselves, were doing the impossible. The footage was grainy, clearly shot from long-range surveillance drones, but it captured scenes that made seasoned diplomats from advanced civilizations question reality itself. There were humans diving headfirst into vast bodies of liquid water, not to escape predators or gather resources, but apparently for fun. Pure, inexplicable fun. Watch this next sequence carefully. Velthara's voice carried that particular tone reserved for presenting evidence of insanity. The hologram shifted to show humans consuming what their scanners identified as mildly toxic plant matter. Not accidentally, deliberately. They seemed to enjoy the burning sensation these spices cause in their mouths. Several delegates made distressed noises as they watched humans actually seek out increasingly potent versions of these toxins. But the footage that really broke their minds came next. Humans, completely unprotected except for thin fabric coverings, were lying motionless under their star's direct radiation, not hiding from it, not building shelters, actively exposing themselves to cosmic rays that would cook most civilized species in minutes. And they appeared to be enjoying it, their faces relaxed in what their behavioral analysts had identified as contentment. These creatures, and Velthara's universal translator actually stuttered over the word humans, like it was trying to process something fundamentally incomprehensible, come from what our planetary classification system rates as a Class 12 death world. The number sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. Most of their species evolved on Class 1 or 2 worlds, stable, predictable environments with gentle weather patterns and minimal geological activity. A Class 12 meant a planet actively trying to kill everything on its surface through multiple different methods simultaneously. The atmospheric pressure alone, Velthara continued, manipulating the display to show Earth's environmental readings, would literally crush the exoskeletons of our chitinous friends here. She gestured to a section of insect-like beings who clicked nervously. The gravity well is so intense that our medical teams estimate just standing upright there would snap the bones of most species in this room. The hologram zoomed in on humans performing what their databases labeled as recreational climbing. These creatures were scaling vertical rock faces using nothing but their bare hands and primitive metal tools. No anti-gravity assistance, no environmental suits, no safety nets. Just raw muscle and determination. Their xenobiology teams had run the numbers dozens of times, convinced there had to be an error somewhere. Our best scientists estimate their muscle density is approximately 3 times what should be necessary for their gravity well, Velthara announced. They're not just surviving on a death world, they're overbuilt for it. Council leader Quintar shifted in his floating meditation pod, all 4 his eyes focusing independently on different data streams scrolling past. The implications were terrifying. If beings as physically robust had achieved space travel, what did that mean for the carefully maintained balance of galactic civilization? The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of translation, devices working overtime to process concepts that didn't exist in most galactic languages. How do you translate extreme sports to a species that evolved to avoid all risk? How do you explain adventure tourism to creatures whose idea of excitement is finding a new type of crystalline formation? But it wasn't just their physical capabilities that worried the Council. The behavioral analysis was worse. These humans didn't just endure hardship. They actively sought it out. They had entire industries built around putting themselves in danger for entertainment. They called it fun. The debate that followed was swift and decisive. Every delegate understood what was at stake. If word spread to the galaxy that creatures from death worlds could not only survive but thrive in space, it might inspire other dangerous worlds to attempt contact. The stability of galactic civilization depended on the simple understanding that nice, safe worlds produce nice, safe spacefaring species. Within hours, the order was transmitted across subspace networks to every military commander in the outer systems. Establish a quarantine perimeter around the Sol system immediately. These creatures, called humans, were to be contained before they could spread their dangerous philosophy of voluntary risk-taking to the civilized galaxy. The pacification fleet was already being assembled. Captain Beth Taylor was 3 sips into what she considered the perfect cup of coffee when her peaceful morning got turned upside down. The communications array on the Endeavour started crackling with static, then cleared into something she'd never heard before, an alien voice speaking through their universal translator system. She was so shocked she nearly spit coffee all over her control panel. "Tom!" She shouted across the bridge to her first officer, Thomas Reed, who was elbow-deep in maintenance work on their mining equipment. "You need to hear this right now." Tom looked up from the diagnostic panel. He'd been cursing at for the past hour. His hands were covered in grease, and he had that focused expression he always wore when machinery wasn't cooperating. "What's going on, Captain?" "We get a distress signal." Beth just pointed at the communications console, where text was still scrolling across the screen. Tom wiped his hands on a rag and walked over, reading over her shoulder. His eyebrows climbed higher and higher as he processed what he was seeing. "Wait! Hold on," Tom said, scratching his head and leaving a small grease mark. "They want to put us in protective custody, like we're endangered animals or something." The message was unlike anything in their first contact protocols. These aliens weren't asking for trade agreements or cultural exchanges. They were insisting on relocating all humanity to what they called a suitable habitat preserve. The language was so polite it was almost insulting, like someone talking to a child who didn't know any better. Beth started laughing. At first, it was just a chuckle, but as she kept reading, it turned into full-blown belly laughs that echoed through the bridge. She had to put her coffee mug down before she spilled it everywhere. "What's so funny?" Tom asked, but he was starting to grin too. Beth's laughter was infectious, and some of the crew members from other sections were already heading toward the bridge to see what was going on. "Tom, listen to this," Beth managed to say between giggles. She cleared her throat and read from the alien message in an overly dramatic voice. "We offer relocation to a perfectly safe world with optimal atmospheric conditions, stable geological formations, and no unpredictable weather patterns." By now, half the crew had gathered on the bridge. These weren't your typical space explorers. They were tough, practical people who'd chosen careers that most sane folks would run from. Jake Morrison, their chief engineer, had spent 15 years working on deep-sea oil rigs where one mistake could kill your entire crew. Lisa Hayes, their geologist, had made her reputation studying active volcanoes by getting closer to lava flows than anyone thought possible. Robert Clark, their systems specialist, had been a mountain rescue coordinator who specialized in pulling people out of avalanches and blizzards. "They're worried about our safety," Beth continued reading, barely able to keep a straight face. "They expressed concern about our exposure to dangerous weather systems, geological instability, and large predatory organisms." The entire crew burst into laughter. These were people who had chosen to leave Earth specifically because space offered new challenges and unknown dangers. The idea that someone wanted to protect them from risk was like telling a fish it would be safer on dry land. "Let me get this straight," Jake called out from the back of the group. "These aliens want to move us to a boring planet with no earthquakes, no storms, and no dangerous animals? That sounds like the most miserable place in the universe." "It gets better," Beth said, scrolling down to read more of the message. "They're confused about why any intelligent species would choose to live on a world with tectonic activity, atmospheric disturbances, or competitive ecosystems. They think we're trapped on Earth and need rescue." Tom was shaking his head in amazement. "They really don't get it, do they? They think Earth is some kind of prison planet instead of home." The laughter was interrupted by a sharp beeping from their sensor array. Tom rushed over to check the readings, and his expression changed instantly. "Captain, we got company." 37 vessels just dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Military formation. Beth's smile faded as she looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were arranged in a textbook containment pattern, clearly designed to prevent any escape. These weren't diplomats coming for a friendly chat. This was an intervention force. "Well, boys," Beth announced to her crew, and her voice carried that particular tone that meant trouble was brewing. "Looks like our new space neighbors aren't just concerned about our safety. They're planning to do something about it, whether we want them to or not." She walked over to the weapons console, which in their case meant the controls for their mining equipment. The Endeavor wasn't a warship. It was a deep space mining vessel equipped with plasma cutters, explosive charges, and industrial-grade drilling equipment. But in the hands of people who'd spent their careers working in the most dangerous environments humanity could find, even mining tools could become something more. "Tom, prep the mining charges," Beth ordered, but there was a grin creeping back onto her face. "I think we're about to give these folks a demonstration of what humans do when someone tries to tell us what's good for us." The crew scattered to their stations with the kind of calm efficiency that comes from years of working in high-risk situations. They might not have military training, but they had something else: the absolute refusal to let anyone else decide what risks they were allowed to take. The alien fleet was about to learn that there's a big difference between protecting someone and trying to control them. What happened next would be talked about in alien military academies for generations, though not for the reasons the Galactic Council expected. The battle that erupted around the Kepler system didn't just break the rules of conventional space warfare. It completely rewrote them. The Galactic Warfare Manual, a document refined over thousands of years of conflicts between civilized species, was based on one fundamental assumption that nobody had ever questioned: all intelligent beings valued their survival above everything else. The aliens were about to discover just how wrong that assumption could be. Captain Beth Taylor made a decision that should have been suicide. Instead of retreating to open space where her mining ship could be easily surrounded, she dove straight toward the massive gas giant that dominated the system. Not around it, not past it. Directly into its upper atmosphere, where the crushing pressure and radiation levels would kill any sane pilot. "Captain, the hull stress indicators are going crazy." Jake Morrison shouted from the engine room, his voice barely audible over the groaning metal and screaming alarms. The ship was being squeezed like a tin can, and their radiation detectors were registering levels that should have fried their electronics 5 minutes ago. But Jake had spent 15 years keeping machinery running in conditions that would make most engineers quit on the spot. Deep-sea oil rigs had taught him that sometimes equipment worked better when you pushed it past its supposed limits. Beth gripped the controls so hard her knuckles went white, feeling the ship shake like it was trying to tear itself apart. The G-forces from her maneuvers would have crushed most alien species, but humans had evolved from creatures that could run down prey for hours across African plains. Their bodies were built for endurance and stress in ways that most galactic species simply couldn't match. "They're actually following us," Tom Reed called out from a sensor station, disbelief clear in his voice. 3 alien vessels were attempting to pursue them into the gas giant's magnetic field. Their sleek hulls never designed for anything more challenging than cruising through empty space. Their shields are flickering like Christmas lights. Beth let out a grim laugh, despite the chaos around her. Of course they are. These people probably designed their ships like luxury cruisers. All comfort, no backbone. She pulled another impossible turn that sent coffee cups flying across the bridge. They've never had to build anything that could survive a real challenge. The alien ships were beautiful. There was no denying that. Smooth, elegant curves that spoke of advanced technology and sophisticated engineering. But they were built by species that viewed space travel as a refined, civilized activity. The idea of deliberately flying into dangerous conditions was as foreign to them as breathing underwater. While Beth was playing cat and mouse with the alien fleet in the gas giant's atmosphere, something else was happening across human space. Word of the alien ultimatum was spreading through quantum burst transmissions faster than wildfire. Mining colonies, research stations, and exploration ships scattered across dozens of systems were all receiving the same message. Aliens wanted to relocate humanity for their own safety. The response was immediate and unanimous. Humans don't like being told what to do, especially by strangers who claim to know what's best for them. The mining ship Defiance was the first to answer Beth's distress call. Captain Lisa Hayes had been extracting rare minerals from an asteroid field when she got the news. Her ship was built like a tank, designed to ram through space debris that would puncture normal vessels. "On our way, Beth," came her voice over the comm. "These aliens picked the wrong species to babysit." Dr. Robert Clark's research vessel Curiosity wasn't far behind. His ship specialized in studying dangerous phenomena, solar flares, black hole emissions, unstable wormholes, the kind of cosmic events that most species observe from very, very far away. "Count us in." Robert's calm voice cut through the static. "My crew's been looking for some excitement anyway." What started as one mining ship refusing to be relocated had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a spontaneous fleet of humans who shared one dangerous trait. They had all chosen careers that required them to work in environments actively trying to kill them, and somehow, impossibly, they enjoyed it. The alien commanders watched their tactical displays with growing confusion. Their perfectly organized formation was falling apart as human ships appeared from directions that shouldn't have been possible. These weren't military vessels. They were industrial ships, research platforms, and exploration craft. But they were being piloted with a reckless skill that defied every computer model in the alien database. Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom from deep in the ship's engine room. "Captain, I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." His tone carried a particular mix of excitement and insanity that meant he was about to suggest something spectacularly dangerous. "Let me guess," Beth replied, wrestling with controls as another wave of radiation washed over them. "You want to do something that violates several laws of physics and probably a few safety regulations?" "Now you're getting it," Jake laughed. "Remember that plasma mining array we've been testing? The one that's supposedly too dangerous for routine use." Beth's grin could have powered the ship's engines. "I like where this is going. Show these aliens what happens when humans get creative." The alien fleet was about to learn that there's a big difference between superior technology and superior determination. And when humans get their backs against the wall, they don't just fight back. They innovate in ways that keep their enemies awake at night. The battle for humanity's freedom was just getting started. Ambassador Velthera couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her command center, the most secure location on the most advanced flagship in the Galactic Council's enforcement fleet, was filled with damage reports that made no sense. For 3 straight days, her technologically superior forces had been getting picked apart by what amounted to a bunch of space miners with jury-rigged equipment. But what really bothered her wasn't the tactical defeats. It was the intercepted communications showing that these humans were actually enjoying themselves. The holographic displays showed the current status of her once proud fleet. 7 ships with hull breaches from improvised plasma weapons. 12 vessels with crippled engines after humans had somehow turned asteroid mining charges into guided missiles. 3 command ships completely disabled after their crews suffered what the medical teams diplomatically called extreme motion sickness from trying to match human maneuvering capabilities. "How?" she whispered to her tactical officer, a spider-like being whose 8 eyes were all focused on different data streams. "How are they doing this with mining equipment?" Her officer's translation device struggled to find words. "They appear to have weaponized industrial tools in ways our combat computers never anticipated. Their plasma cutters weren't designed for ship-to-ship combat, but they're using them like precision artillery. Our shield were calibrated to stop military-grade weapons, not modified mining lasers." But the real shock came when her proximity alarm started screaming. Something was approaching the debris field surrounding her flagship, a field so dense with twisted metal and radiation that her own sensors couldn't penetrate it. No sane pilot would attempt to navigate through that death trap, which was exactly why her defensive systems weren't watching it. The first sign of trouble was a section of her hull starting to glow cherry red. Then sparks began flying as industrial plasma cutters, the kind used to slice through asteroid rock, started carving through her ship's armor like it was made of paper. Her security teams rushed to respond, but by the time they reached the breach, it was too late. Captain Beth Taylor stepped to the hole in her hull like she was walking into her own living room. She was wearing what looked like a modified mining suit, the kind designed to protect workers in the vacuum of space while they carved up asteroids. Behind her came 3 more humans, all grinning like they'd just won some kind of contest. Velthoroz's arms reflexively reached for her emergency communicator, but Beth just raised one hand in a gesture that somehow managed to be both peaceful and confident. "Easy there, Ambassador. We're not here to hurt anybody. Just thought it was time we had a proper conversation." The security team that finally arrived found themselves facing humans who showed no sign of stress or aggression. They were just standing there in the middle of the command center, looking around with the kind of curiosity that tourists might show in a museum. One of them was actually examining the holographic displays with obvious interest. "This is impossible," Velthoroz managed to say, her translator working overtime to process her shock. "Our sensors showed no approach vector. The debris field radiation levels would have killed any organic life form." Beth removed her helmet, shaking out hair that was damp with sweat, but still grinning like she just finished an enjoyable workout. "Yeah, it was a bit tricky navigating through all that twisted metal. Good thing our people are used to working in tight spaces. Jake here used to repair deep-sea oil rigs, and Tom's background is mountain rescue. We've all dealt with worse." The casual way she dismissed what should have been an impossible infiltration made Velthoroz's translator emit small sparks. Her entire worldview was based on the idea that intelligent beings avoided unnecessary risk. These creatures talk about navigating a deadly debris field like it was a minor inconvenience. "I'm thinking there's been a bit of misunderstanding here," Beth continued, her tone conversational like they were neighbors chatting over a fence. "See, we don't actually need protection from our big, scary planet. Matter of fact, we like our big, scary planet. It's what made us who we are." Velthoroz's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as her translator struggled with concepts it had never encountered. The idea of voluntarily choosing to live in dangerous conditions, of actually preferring challenge over safety, was like trying to explain color to a species that had evolved without eyes. "Your species developed on a death world," Velthoroz said slowly. "And you consider this beneficial?" "Absolutely," Beth replied, and her smile somehow got even wider. "Earth taught us to be tough, to think fast, to work together when things get dangerous. Every challenge we faced made us stronger. Why would we want to give that up for some boring paradise planet where nothing ever happens?" The translator started emitting that struggling sound again as it tried to process phrases like recreational danger exposure and voluntary risk assessment. These weren't concepts that existed in any galactic language because no civilized species had ever developed them. "What exactly do you want from us?" Velthoroz finally managed to ask, genuinely curious despite her fear. Beth looked around at the advanced technology surrounding them, her expression shifting from amusement to something more thoughtful. "Same thing we've always wanted, really. To see what's out there, meet new people, learn new things, and maybe help out where we can." She gestured toward the holographic star charts floating nearby. "Your galaxy's a big place. I bet there's plenty of work for folks who aren't afraid of getting their hands dirty." The implications of what Beth was suggesting slowly sank in. These humans didn't want to conquer galactic space or destroy the existing order. They wanted to join it, to contribute to it, to be part of something bigger than themselves. But they wanted to do it on their own terms, bringing their own unique strengths to the table. "You're talking about integration," Velthoroz said, "but without changing what you are." "Now you're getting it," Beth nodded. "We're not looking to cause trouble. But we're also not going to let anyone put us in a cage, no matter how comfortable it might be. Humans work best when we're free to choose our own challenges." For the first time in 3 days, Velthoroz began to think that maybe, just maybe, there might be a solution to this crisis that didn't end in disaster for everyone involved. 8 months had passed since the confrontation that everyone expected would end in disaster. The same crystal chamber that had once buzzed with fear and uncertainty now hummed with completely different energy. Ambassador Velthoroz found herself in the strangest position of her diplomatic career, preparing to present a report that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. She stood before the assembled representatives of 47 species, but this time the holographic displays weren't showing surveillance footage of dangerous death world creatures. Instead, they were displaying something that had shocked every xenosociologist in the galaxy. Humans had become the most requested partners for dangerous operations across civilized space. The Human Integration Report, Velthara announced, and even she had a pause at how bizarre those words sounded. The first hologram flickered to life, showing a rescue station floating in what had previously been considered a ship graveyard. Twisted metal debris that could shred any normal vessel now served as a base of operations where humans in their modified mining suits performed rescues that had been impossible for centuries. Station Alpha 7 in the Broken Belt asteroid field, she explained to a mesmerized audience, has successfully recovered over 200 vessels in the past 6 months. Ships that we had written off as total losses due to the navigational hazards. The hologram showed humans moving through the debris field like they were swimming through water, their modified suits somehow protecting them from radiation levels that would have killed most species instantly. The next image made several delegates lean forward in amazement. Human engineers were working alongside thermal K technicians in the corona of a dying star, harvesting energy in conditions that registered as absolutely lethal on every safety scale in the galaxy. The humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving, their equipment somehow modified to handle temperatures that should have vaporized both the workers and their tools. The thermal K energy projects have increased efficiency by 300% since human integration, Velthara reported. It appears that humans excel at what they call extreme environment operations. But the image that really broke the minds of the assembled diplomats showed something none of them had expected. Human establishments scattered across 17 different systems, and aliens were actually choosing to visit them, not just for business, for entertainment. They've opened what they call taverns, Velthara continued, her translator still struggling with the concept. Establishments where multiple species gather voluntarily to consume mild toxins together while engaging in what humans term socializing. The hologram showed creatures from 6 different worlds sitting around tables, apparently enjoying themselves while drinking substances that would have sent their ancestors running in terror. The economic data was even more surprising. Council leader Quintar's 4 eyes moved independently as he processed the trade statistics scrolling past. Human space had become a hub of interspecies cooperation that nobody had seen coming. Species that had maintained polite but distant relationships for centuries were suddenly working together on projects that would have been impossible without human involvement. The Ornaki Mining Guild hired humans as safety consultants, Velthara reported, barely believing her own words. Species that had maintained casualty rates of 40% in hazardous mining operations saw those numbers drop to less than 15% with human oversight. The holographic displays shifted to show Velnari exploration teams working alongside human guides in environments that had previously been considered too dangerous for scientific study. Volcanic worlds, radioactive nebulae, unstable systems with multiple gravitational anomalies, all suddenly accessible thanks to humans who treated extreme danger like a weekend hobby. Human survival techniques have reduced Velnari exploration casualties by 60%, she continued. They've taught our teams methods for surviving in hostile environments that our textbooks claimed were uninhabitable. But perhaps the most shocking development was something that defied every prediction their behavioral specialists had made. Humans had started to offer what they called adventure tourism, controlled exposure to dangerous situations for species who had never experienced real risk in their entire evolutionary history. Multiple species are voluntarily paying humans to experience what they call controlled danger, Velthara announced, and several delegates made sounds of disbelief. Apparently, many civilized beings have developed what humans term risk deficiency, a desire to experience challenges that their safe worlds cannot provide. The tourism programs were carefully managed, with human guides ensuring that alien participants experienced just enough danger to feel alive without actually risking serious harm. Species that had spent millions of years avoiding all possible threats were lining up to experience what their ancestors would have considered nightmare scenarios. Trade routes that had been abandoned for centuries were reopening with human escort services. Cargo ships that had been unable to navigate through hazardous regions were now making regular runs with human pilots who treated asteroid fields and radiation storms like minor traffic obstacles. The recommendation? Council leader Quintar asked, though his tone suggested he already knew what was coming. Velthara took what would have been a deep breath if her species breathed. Official recognition of humanity as a Galactic Council member species with full diplomatic status and trading rights. The words that followed would have been impossible to imagine a year earlier. It appears that what we initially classified as dangerous contamination, the rest of the galaxy has embraced as... She paused, searching for the right term. Refreshing? The vote was swift and unanimous, but for completely different reasons than their previous decision about humanity. 8 months ago, they had voted to contain humans because they were afraid of what they might do to galactic civilization. Today, they were voting to welcome humans because of what they had already done for it. The Deathworlders hadn't been welcome when they first arrived in galactic space, but they had come anyway, bringing with them a philosophy that the universe was meant to be explored, not feared, and somehow, impossibly, they had made the entire galaxy a more interesting, more adventurous, and more alive place to live. The age of safe, predictable galactic civilization was over. The age of human-inspired adventure had begun,